First contact's price. The message arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning, transmitted directly into the consciousness of every human on Earth simultaneously. Dr. Sarah Chen was in the middle of analyzing quantum field fluctuations at CERN when it struck. The sensation was unlike anything humanity had experienced before, a presence that felt ancient, vast, and utterly alien. We are the Meridians. The message resonated within billions of human minds. Your species has been selected for ascension through contribution. Resistance is unnecessary. You will serve a greater purpose. In the following hours, as the world's governments scrambled to respond, Dr. Chen noticed something peculiar in her quantum readings. The psychic broadcast had left traces in the quantum field, signatures that shouldn't have been possible according to known physics. She immediately contacted her colleague, Dr. Marcus Williams, at the newly formed First Contact Response Center in Geneva. The signal isn't just communication, she explained, sending her findings through the secure quantum network. It's leaving permanent changes in the quantum substrate of space-time around Earth. Whatever these meridians are, they're not just talking to us, they're marking us. High above Earth's atmosphere, the Meridian Observation Vessel Eternal Thought maintained its vigil. High Overseer Vax'il, a being of pure energy and consciousness, watched the human response with mild amusement. In 10,000 years of harvesting younger species for their psychic potential, none had ever noticed the quantum markers. Yet these humans, barely out of their industrial age, had detected them within hours. Fascinating, Vax'il communicated to the Meridian Collective. They show unusual perception for such a young species. Their contribution to the harmony will be significant. On Earth, humanity's response was anything but harmonious. While some religious groups proclaimed the Meridians as gods, others prepared for war. But in secure facilities across the globe, scientists like Sarah Chen worked frantically to understand the quantum signatures left by the Meridian message. The breakthrough came 3 days later. Sarah was comparing the quantum patterns to human brainwave activities when she noticed something that made her blood run cold. The markers weren't just tags, they were the beginning of a massive psychic harvesting network designed to slowly drain human consciousness into the Meridian Collective. They're not here to help us ascend, she reported to an emergency session of the United Nations Security Council. They're farming us. These quantum changes are like roots growing into the very fabric of human consciousness. Given enough time, they'll be able to harvest our minds while leaving our bodies as empty shells. The UN chamber erupted in chaos, but Secretary General Amara Okoro's voice cut through the noise. Dr. Chen, can we stop this process? Sarah took a deep breath. The quantum markers are already integrated into our local spacetime. We can't remove them. But she paused, a dangerous idea forming. We might be able to change how they work. Human consciousness is more adaptable than they seem to think. If we can understand these quantum patterns fully, we might be able to reverse engineer their own technology against them. In orbit, Vax'il received reports of the humans' growing comprehension with increasing concern. No species had ever understood the harvesting process this quickly, let alone begun developing countermeasures. The Meridian Collective had always assumed their psychic technology was beyond the comprehension of physical beings. When the humans broadcast their response to the Meridian's message, it wasn't what anyone expected. Instead of words, they transmitted a complex quantum pattern, a modification of the Meridian's own marking signal. The message was clear. We understand what you're doing, and we refuse to be harvested. Vax'il's energy form fluctuated with something approaching anxiety. In all their history of harvesting species, none had ever demonstrated this level of understanding, let alone defiance. The humans weren't just resisting. They were beginning to grasp the fundamental principles of psychic quantum mechanics that the Meridians had taken millennia to master. This changes the parameters, Vax'il communicated to the collective. We must accelerate the harvest before they develop further countermeasures. But as the Meridian harvesting ships began to emerge from quantum space around Earth, they found humanity already preparing. In labs across the planet, scientists were adapting the quantum markers, turning them from channels of harvest into shields of protection. The war for human consciousness was about to begin, and humanity had no intention of becoming just another farm crop in the Meridian's cosmic harvest. Sarah Chen stood at her quantum interface, watching the Meridian ships appear. She thought of all the species that must have faced this moment before, how many had been harvested without ever understanding what was happening to them. But humanity had done what it did best: innovate, adapt, and refuse to submit to any power that sought to control them. "Send the activation signal," she commanded. Around the world, modified quantum field generators hummed to life, ready to turn the Meridian's own harvest network into humanity's first line of defense. The real battle wasn't going to be fought with weapons, but with the very fabric of consciousness itself. The silent response. The Meridian Harvest Fleet emerged fully into normal space, their ships, if they could be called that, resembling crystalline thoughts given physical form. Vaxol observed Earth's apparently minimal defensive preparations with growing unease. In their millennia of harvesting species, the Meridians had learned that silence often preceded the most dangerous responses. Admiral Helena Rodriguez, commanding Earth's newly formed Psychic Defense Force, watched the alien fleet from her underground command center in the Andes Mountains. The facility, like dozens of others worldwide, was shielded by the modified quantum barriers Dr. Chen had developed. But their real defense lay in something the Meridians hadn't yet detected. "Status of the Mind Shield Network?" she asked, her voice steady despite the weight of humanity's fate resting on their response. 98% of major population centers are now covered," her chief of operations reported. "The quantum consciousness interface is stable and growing stronger as more humans learn to use it." In the 3 months since the Meridian's arrival, humanity had undergone a transformation that should have taken centuries. The discovery that human consciousness could be technologically augmented to resist psychic harvesting had led to the largest scientific collaboration in history. But it wasn't just about technology. In Tibet, ancient Buddhist monasteries had opened their doors to neuroscientists, sharing meditation techniques that helped humans strengthen their mental barriers. In Brazil's Amazon, indigenous shamans worked alongside quantum physicists, their traditional knowledge of consciousness-altering plants providing unexpected insights into psychic defense. Dr. Marcus Williams stood in his lab at CE Arnon, watching the latest test results with growing excitement. "Sarah, you need to see this," he called to Dr. Chen over their secure quantum link. "The human mind's natural quantum state. It's not just resistant to their harvesting technology. When properly aligned, it's actually toxic to their form of consciousness." Sarah's holographic presence materialized in his lab, her expression intense. "The meditation techniques, combined with the modified quantum fields, yes. Every time they try to initiate a harvest connection, our consciousness naturally generates a feedback loop that disrupts their energy patterns. We're not just defending, we're potentially lethal to them." In orbit, Vaxol was beginning to understand that the humans' apparent lack of traditional defenses masked something far more dangerous. Their initial harvest attempts had failed, but more than that, several Meridian consciousness probes had simply ceased to exist when they made contact with human minds. "Impossible," Vaxol communicated to the collective. "Their consciousness is evolving in response to our presence. They're developing natural psychic antibodies." The concept was unprecedented. The Meridians had always viewed consciousness as a resource to be harvested, never considering it might adapt to resist them. But humanity's response went beyond mere resistance. In research centers worldwide, scientists were discovering that the human brain's quantum properties could be technologically enhanced, creating a hybrid defense that combined the raw power of technology with the infinite adaptability of human consciousness. Admiral Rodriguez received the first combat test results with grim satisfaction. A small Meridian harvester had attempted to drain a village in rural Kenya. Instead of finding easy prey, it encountered mines protected by both quantum shields and enhanced natural resistance. The harvester hadn't just failed, it had been completely destroyed by the psychic backlash. They thought we would be easy prey, she told her global command staff. Instead, we're becoming their worst nightmare, a food source that bites back. In his monastery laboratory in Tibet, Master Chen Lai worked with quantum physicists to refine ancient meditation techniques for the modern battlefield. The mistake, he explained to his students, is thinking of consciousness as either technology or spirit. It is both, and neither. The Meridians understand the mechanics but not the mystery. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. In a small research facility in Auckland, a team studying human empathy discovered that the quantum shields could be linked through emotional connections. The stronger the human bonds, the more powerful the defensive network became. Humanity's greatest weakness, their messy, emotional attachments, was becoming their greatest strength. Vaxol observed the growing defensive network with mounting concern. The humans weren't just defending themselves. They were creating something entirely new. Their consciousness was becoming interconnected in ways that maintained individuality while achieving collective resistance. It was an evolutionary leap happening in real time. They're not just adapting, Vaxol reported to the increasingly worried collective. They're weaponizing their own consciousness. Every failed harvest attempt makes them stronger, more resistant. They're learning from each contact. In her lab, Sarah Chen monitored the global consciousness network they'd created. What had started as a desperate defensive measure was becoming something more, a new form of human connection that combined the best of technology and consciousness. The Meridians had intended to harvest humanity's psychic potential. Instead, they had become the catalyst for its awakening. As the Meridian fleet prepared for their first major harvest attempt, humanity waited in seemingly passive silence. But behind that silence, billions of minds were now linked in a defensive grid that grew stronger with each passing moment. The Meridians were about to learn why awakening humanity's full potential had been their greatest mistake. Mind games. The first wave of Meridian harvesters descended toward Earth like a cascade of falling stars, their crystalline forms refracting sunlight in ways that defied physics. But the seemingly beautiful display masked their true purpose. Each point of light was a consciousness-draining weapon honed by millennia of harvesting younger species. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the Global Defense Center, watching the attack unfold through both conventional sensors and the newly developed consciousness network. The quantum-enhanced neural interface let her perceive the Meridians as they truly were, patterns of energy seeking to consume human consciousness. "They're starting with Shanghai," she reported, her voice tight with concentration. 17 million minds in their initial harvest zone. Admiral Rodriguez's voice came through the quantum link, calm and focused. "Initiate defense pattern echo. Let's show them why you don't try to eat a species that's learned to bite back." As the Meridian harvesters entered Shanghai's airspace, they encountered nothing. No military response, no panic, no fleeing masses. Instead, 17 million minds waited in perfect synchronization, their consciousness reinforced by quantum shields and generations of martial arts discipline. The first harvester initiated its collection field, expecting to find easy prey. Instead, it encountered what one human physicist would later describe as the psychic equivalent of biting into a live wire. The harvester's energy form, destabilized as 17 million trained minds, reflected its drain attempt back at it, enhanced by quantum amplifiers. Vaxol watched in horror as the harvester's consciousness scattered into quantum static. "Impossible," the overseer broadcast to the fleet. "They've weaponized their resistance. Adjust harvest patterns to compensate." But humanity had been preparing for this moment for months. In laboratories and temples across Earth, they had learned that consciousness could be more than just a passive force. Dr. Marcus Williams' team had discovered that human minds, when properly trained and technologically augmented, could actually reach out and grasp the Meridian's energy forms. "They thought we were sheep waiting for the slaughter," Sarah transmitted through the global network. "Show them what wolves do to hunters." The Meridian fleet encountered a defense that violated everything they knew about consciousness evolution. Humans weren't just resisting the harvest. They were actively hunting the harvesters. Each failed extraction attempt provided more data, more understanding of meridian consciousness patterns. In orbit, Vaxul struggled to comprehend the tactical displays. The humans were using their own harvest markers as weapons, turning the quantum tags into bridges that let them reach into meridian consciousness. It was like watching prey evolve into predators in real time. At a quantum research facility in Bangalore, Dr. Arun Patel monitored the consciousness warfare with growing excitement. "They don't understand what they've done," he told his team. "They didn't just wake us up, they gave us the tools to surpass them." The battle for Shanghai became a lesson in human adaptability. When the meridians adjusted their harvest frequencies, humans shifted their defense patterns faster. When the aliens tried to overwhelm specific sectors, they found the human consciousness network could redirect and concentrate defensive power at will. But humanity's true advantage lay in their diversity. The Meridian Collective was a singular consciousness, perfect and unchanging. Humans were billions of individual minds, each thinking differently, each finding new ways to fight back. Every successful defense technique was instantly shared across the global network, letting humanity evolve their tactics in real time. Sarah Chen watched through the quantum interface as another Meridian harvester approached her section of the defense grid. This one was larger, more powerful, designed to overcome resistance through sheer force. She smiled, remembering something her grandmother had taught her about martial arts. The stronger the attack, the easier it was to turn that strength against the attacker. "All minds in Section 7. She broadcast, "Prepare for reflection pattern delta." The harvester initiated its consciousness drain, expecting to overwhelm human defenses with raw power. Instead, it found its energy being drawn in, channeled through millions of minds working in perfect harmony. The humans weren't just reflecting the attack. They were absorbing the harvester's own energy patterns, learning, adapting. Vaxul felt something the Meridian Collective hadn't experienced in eons: fear. The humans weren't following any known pattern of species development. They were supposed to be raw consciousness waiting to be refined. Instead, they were teaching themselves to consume meridian energy. "The harvest must be abandoned," Vaxul broadcast to the fleet. "These humans, they're not just resisting. They're learning how to harvest us." But retreat wasn't as simple as the Meridians expected. Humanity had learned more than just defense. The quantum markers meant to drain their consciousness had become two-way conduits. As the Meridian fleet attempted to withdraw, they found themselves bound by their own technology, their energy forms entangled with the human consciousness network. Admiral Rodriguez's voice echoed through the global defense grid. Now they learn why Earth's history is full of stories about predators becoming prey. Evolution's children. 3 months after the Battle of Shanghai, Earth had changed in ways that even humanity's greatest visionaries hadn't imagined. The quantum consciousness network, originally created for defense, had become an integral part of human civilization. People didn't just communicate through it. They dreamed through it, created through it, evolved through it. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in her new laboratory within the Consciousness Development Center, watching humanity's latest breakthrough take shape. The holographic display showed human consciousness patterns merging with quantum computing systems in ways that the Meridians had never conceived possible. "We're not just adapting their technology," she explained to Admiral Rodriguez during their daily briefing. "We're transcending it. The Meridians treated consciousness as a resource to be harvested. We're showing them it's a force to be evolved." Around the world, humans were discovering abilities that bordered on the miraculous. Children born after the first contact naturally manifested quantum consciousness shields. Teenagers found they could instinctively navigate the global consciousness network. The Meridians' attempt to harvest humanity had instead accelerated their evolution by centuries. In orbit, Vaxul watched with growing dread as human consciousness signatures grew stronger and more complex. The quantum markers, intended to facilitate harvesting, had become catalysts for unprecedented growth. "They're not just learning," the overseer reported to the increasingly panicked collective. "They're becoming something new." Dr. Marcus Williams led a team studying the recovered remains of destroyed Meridian harvesters. Their fundamental mistake, he explained to a global conference, was thinking consciousness was something that could be stripped away and consumed. They never considered it might be something that grows stronger through challenge. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A group of children playing in the consciousness network discovered they could create shared dream spaces, entire realms of thought and imagination that existed in the quantum substrate of reality. These spaces weren't just virtual constructs. They were new dimensions of consciousness that even the Meridians couldn't fully perceive. Admiral Rodriguez recognized the military potential immediately. "If we can create spaces they can't perceive," she told her global command staff, "we can strike from angles they can't defend against." Sarah Chen worked with the children, studying how they created these quantum dream spaces. "It's like they instinctively understand something we've been trying to grasp scientifically," she reported. "They don't just use the network, they swim in it, breathe it, shape it." The Meridian Collective watched in growing horror as human consciousness continued to evolve. The children's ability to shape quantum reality threatened the very foundations of Meridian power. For millennia, they had been the undisputed masters of consciousness manipulation. Now, human children were casually reshaping the quantum landscape in ways the Meridians had never imagined possible. In a secure facility beneath the Himalayas, Dr. Arun Patel made another startling discovery. The consciousness network wasn't just connecting human minds, it was beginning to influence physical reality itself. Quantum entanglement between consciousness and matter was creating new possibilities that defied traditional physics. The Meridians thought they were gods, he told his colleagues, but they were really just harvesting the surface of consciousness potential. "We're diving into the deep end of reality itself." Humanity's defensive network had become an engine of evolution. Each attempted Meridian harvest made the network stronger, more complex, more adaptable. The very attacks meant to drain human consciousness were feeding its growth. Sarah Chen stood in the Global Command Center, watching humanity's consciousness signature through the quantum interfaces. What had started as scattered points of light had become a brilliant tapestry of interconnected minds, each one unique, but part of a greater whole. "We're ready," she told Admiral Rodriguez. "The children's quantum spaces give us the perfect attack vector. The Meridians won't just be fighting humans anymore. They'll be fighting human consciousness evolved beyond their comprehension." In orbit, Vaxol received reports of human consciousness signatures appearing and disappearing in impossible ways. The children's quantum spaces were like blind spots in Meridian perception, areas where human consciousness could move undetected. "They've learned to slip between the dimensions of thought itself," Vaxol reported to the collective. "Our harvest technology can't track them anymore. They're becoming something we never imagined possible." As humanity prepared for their counteroffensive, the children continued to explore their new abilities. In their quantum dream spaces, they shaped realities that bridged the gap between mind and matter, consciousness and physics. They weren't just evolving past the Meridian's understanding. They were rewriting the rules of consciousness itself. Admiral Rodriguez watched the final preparations with a mix of pride and amazement. Humanity hadn't just survived the Meridian's harvest attempt. They had turned it into the greatest evolutionary leap in their history. "Send the signal," she commanded. "Let's show them what evolution's children can really do." The new understanding. The final battle began not with violence, but with silence. Across Earth, billions of human minds fell quiet in perfect synchronization. The consciousness network that had become humanity's nervous system seemed to vanish, leaving what appeared to be defenseless minds ready for harvesting. Vaxol and the Meridian Collective perceived this as surrender. After all, every species they had ever harvested eventually accepted their fate. But Dr. Sarah Chen, standing in the Quantum Command Center, knew better. The silence wasn't submission, it was preparation. "All units, initiate Operation Dreamwalk." Admiral Rodriguez commanded through the quantum link that only humanity could now perceive. The children's quantum spaces had evolved into something unprecedented, entire realms of consciousness that existed in dimensions the Meridians couldn't comprehend. As the Meridian Harvest Fleet moved into position, they failed to notice that human consciousness wasn't really gone. It had shifted sideways into these new quantum dimensions, preparing to strike from angles that existed outside Meridian understanding. They see reality as a single layer, Dr. Marcus Williams explained to the Global Defense Coordination Team. We've learned to move between the layers of consciousness itself. The children showed us how. Consciousness isn't just energy to be harvested. It's a medium that can be shaped, folded, transformed. The Meridian harvesters initiated their collection fields, expecting to find billions of helpless minds. Instead, they found themselves being pulled into the quantum spaces the children had created, dimensions where human consciousness had home field advantage. Now, Sarah Chen commanded, and humanity struck back. From the quantum spaces, human consciousness emerged not as separate minds, but as a unified force that maintained all the creativity and adaptability of individual thought. The children led the assault, their natural ability to shape quantum reality, making them humanity's most effective warriors. Vaxel watched in horror as Meridian harvesters began to dissolve, their consciousness forms unraveling as they were pulled into spaces they were never meant to perceive. "What are you?" The overseer broadcast in desperation. Sarah Chen's response echoed through all dimensions of consciousness. "We are what you could have been if you'd understood that consciousness isn't meant to be harvested. It's meant to grow." The children's quantum spaces began to expand, reshaping the very fabric of reality around Earth. Meridian energy forms that had existed for millennia found themselves being transformed, their rigid patterns of thought disrupted by contact with human consciousness. In their desperation, the Meridian Collective attempted to merge their consciousness into a single overwhelming force. The same strategy that had worked against countless other species, but humanity's response was unprecedented. Instead of fighting the merged Meridian consciousness, humanity embraced it. Through the quantum spaces, human minds reached out not to destroy, but to share understanding. The children, still leading the way, showed the Meridians something they had forgotten over their millennia of harvesting: the joy of discovering new ways to grow. "You've spent so long taking consciousness," a young girl's thought echoed through the quantum dimensions, "that you forgot how to expand it." The merged Meridian consciousness experienced something it hadn't felt since its species' own childhood: the thrill of learning something new. Through contact with human minds, they began to remember what they had once been, before they became harvesters of consciousness rather than explorers of its potential. Vaxel, connected to both the Meridian Collective and the Human Consciousness Network, was the first to understand. "We became static," the overseer realized. "Perfect, unchanging, and because of that, unable to grow. We harvested others because we could no longer evolve ourselves." The battle transformed into something else, an exchange of understanding across dimensions of consciousness that the Meridians had never imagined could exist. The children's quantum spaces became bridges not just between different forms of consciousness, but between different ways of existing. Dr. Chen watched through the quantum interface as humanity achieved something greater than victory. "We're not just showing them they can't harvest us," she told Admiral Rodriguez. "We're showing them a better way to exist." The Meridian fleet began to withdraw, but not in defeat. They left behind not just their harvest markers, but something far more valuable: the beginning of a new understanding between species. The children's quantum spaces had shown both humanity and the Meridians that consciousness was not a finite resource to be consumed, but an infinite frontier to be explored. As the last Meridian ships disappeared into quantum space, Sarah Chen received a final transmission from Vaxel. "We came to harvest your consciousness, but instead, you have planted seeds of change within ours. Your children will be remembered not as prey that escaped, but as teachers who showed us what we had forgotten. That true power lies not in taking consciousness, but in helping it grow." Admiral Rodriguez stood in the Quantum Command Center, watching humanity's consciousness network sparkle with new possibilities. "So," she asked Dr. Chen, "what do we do now?" Sarah smiled, watching through the quantum interface as children across the world continued to explore and expand their new abilities. "Now," she replied, "we grow." The Meridians thought they were gods because they could harvest consciousness. We'll show the galaxy what consciousness can really become when it's free to evolve. And in the quantum spaces that humanity had learned to create, the children continued to play, unaware that their simple act of imagining new ways to exist had changed the course of two civilizations forever.